The entire human thought system has only been around for 50,000 years out of 8 billion years. What does that say of our philosophy? What does that say of our teachings about the nature of reality? We're looking at things from a very human perspective, a very limited human perspective. And I think it's important to appreciate that everything that we've got with us right now is a product of evolution and natural selection. So our system, our consciousness has evolved to keep us alive, not to tell us the truth about reality and not to give us the full picture of reality. It's just there to keep things functional so that we survive. And obviously that's not an intention, that's a byproduct of natural selection, because any other system that wasn't wired this way wouldn't have survived. So if you like that blend of science and spirituality and consciousness expansion, stick around, because I really do try and keep things intellectually grounded at the same time as really diving into all of the fantastical things that are happening, let's say energetically, because there is a massive period of consciousness expansion that we're all a part of, on Earth right now. It's blatantly obvious. Lots of stuff is going on, but we don't need to throw science and intellect away as we start to navigate in those spaces. You can bring those forces together and have them work in harmony.
If there are things out there with a head start of a billion years, then it is impossible with our conceptual armor to distinguish them from divinities.
I love this. What this points to is the limitation of our human perception. Human intelligence is an incredibly recent phenomena. We've only had thoughts for 50,000 years. So any higher intelligence that we encounter, whether we think of it as ETs or a spiritual being or a deity, divinity, that could just be a part of life that is intelligent and is more intelligent than us and has a greater degree of consciousness than we do. And in that interplay between us as limited human beings and them as whatever they are, we create all kinds of concepts to understand the distinction between us.
It is impossible with our conceptual armor to distinguish them from divinities.
I love this. So in my opinion, there's definitely more intelligence out there in the universe than human intelligence. And that degree of intelligence is so sophisticated that from our perspective, we might view it like a god.
What we call the physical world is given by our cognitive apparatus.
This is a hard concept to explain briefly, but everything that we're perceiving is something that exists in our own consciousness. And our consciousness has evolved to keep us alive. So everything that we perceive and experience, we've learned to perceive and experience to keep us alive. We're fighting against entropy. We're fighting against real threats out there in the universe that seek to limit our survival.
The physical world is in here. It's a construct.
The physical world is not reality. It is something that we experience and perceive to keep us alive. We have evolved to see the physical world as we do so that we don't die. It's not really what reality is like.
The physical world is in here. It's a construct.
The physical world is something that we've created as human beings to understand our place within the rest of infinite consciousness. There isn't really a world out there that is a moon or a sun or many, many, many stars. That seemingly physical reality, we just use that to facilitate our life as human beings. And our consciousness, our perception as human beings is incredibly limited because we aren't that much more evolved than apes. We really are monkeys. We're apes on Earth who have become slightly more conscious and slightly more intelligent than we were in the past. That's all we are. And we weren't really built to understand the totality of life.
The physical world will have evolved to pick out only what is salient for our survival on this little rock.
Our perception of our place within the universe is just what we need to understand in order to continue living as human beings. We don't see the universe. We see whatever is necessary to keep living. There is a broader universe, there is a broader life out there beyond Earth that is vibrant and full of experience and deeply conscious. It does not look like the physical universe. The physical universe is just how we function as apes. It's not all of reality.
We didn't evolve to develop technology, to have edifying philosophical thoughts, or to figure out what is true.
This is very true. As human beings, we've inherited these biological bodies, and they're limited. They've been created through natural selection, and most of our system is just here so that we keep surviving. However, I don't completely agree with Bernardo here. I think we're living in an era of consciousness expansion where we are able to perceive of and conceive of more than is strictly necessary for our survival. And as a result, what we're seeing is that we're starting to transcend our humanness, and we're starting to step into a state of consciousness where we are more identified as consciousness or as something higher than humanity. You see it reflected in I am a spiritual being having a human experience, rather than just I am a biological creature on Earth. So as humans, we've evolved to perceive the physical universe to keep us surviving. But if there is intelligence out there, you can think of it as ET intelligence or high dimensional entities, whatever it might be, it has evolved too, but it hasn't evolved in the same way that we have on Earth. So it's evolved to sustain its own sense of separation from the universe, but with a totally different set of parameters, because its survival is probably not threatened by biological creatures on Earth or the weather on Earth needing to find shelter. It has a totally different form of life and living that we can barely comprehend of as human beings. But it is living, and it won't have the same perception of our physical universe, because even though we are part of the same reality, the physical universe is something only humans perceive. Only human beings perceive our physical universe. Any other form of intelligence is going to form its own physical universe. If it is even similar to human intelligence at all, it's going to create its own representation of what it sees as the other aspects of infinite consciousness that are distinct from the way that we as human beings do. So get this, we as human beings create our representation of the physical universe, and other entities would create their own representation of a broader universe. As scientists, we are studying our representation of the broader universe. We are not studying the broader universe. Now, as you can see from my reaction there, it's pretty mind-blowing when that sinks in on an experiential level and it's no longer just a concept, but you realize how limited the entire scientific method is. This is something that Plato tried to explain in his allegory of the cave. He said that essentially most of life is just the perception of shadows on the cave wall. It's an illusion, it's not actually what's out there. And that is completely consistent with what I've just shared with you and what Bernardo has shared with us over the course of this video. We don't see reality as it is. What we see is an interface with a broader infinite consciousness that helps us maintain our human existence, and even time is a limitation of that interface. Human beings experience time, and it's hard to get your head around this, I know, but we're born, we live maybe 100 years or so, we die. But there are going to be other aspects of infinite consciousness that perceive reality without that human limitation of time. Likewise, there are going to be parts of infinite consciousness that perceive and interact with reality without being limited by space. Now, from the perspective of humanity, if we're considering an entity or a being or an intelligence that isn't limited by time and isn't limited by space, it's going to be able to do things that are completely astounding to us. It's going to do things that seem magical. It's even going to do things that seem to break the laws of our physical universe. And I think that's what we're seeing with UAP, so UFO phenomena, ET intelligence. I also think it's what we're seeing with higher dimensional entities, any sort of a spiritual being that you can consider, that you may have contact with experientially. All of that is an interplay between your human consciousness and something out there that has a more expanded state of consciousness, perception, existence, identity that we really just can't conceive of. And what's fascinating is I don't think it's just one thing out there. I don't think it's just one type of extraterrestrial intelligence out there. I think there's a lot of things out there, and we're starting to see all of it filter through.
Everything suggests that they may have evolved to the extent that they are no longer limited by the dashboard that evolution has given them.
So this means that it's possible in theory for some entity and intelligence to evolve to a point where it knows that the representation of the universe that it sees is just how its consciousness is representing the rest of infinite consciousness. And it might get to a point where it can actually bypass the rules of reality. Okay, so I think it's clear that there can be other entities in consciousness that have capacities beyond what we have as human beings, because they're not limited by our perception of a seemingly physical universe, and they can, from our perspective, break our rules, because our rules of reality are really just the way that we interplay with the rest of the universe. They're not the rules of all of reality, they're just our rules for our little game that we're playing. But do we think that higher intelligence is just mocking us with no purpose? I'm not so sure. I think that the higher intelligence that is interacting with humanity is doing so because humanity is at a point now where it's capable of realizing its limitations, and by extension, it's now capable of benefiting from what is opened up when it lets go of its limitations. Now, I don't know what this is going to look like. I am also just a human being like everyone else. If I had to hazard a guess though, I think that we are living through very tumultuous times. We as human beings are destroying the planet, and I think it's become imminently urgent to address what we're doing on Earth, lest we destroy ourselves and really piss off the people around us in the universe. So in my view, what we're living through is a massive period of consciousness expansion, and it's going to come through in a variety of ways for a variety of different people. Some people are going to turn to science, consciousness-only philosophy, broader metaphysical perspectives. Some people are going to turn to spirituality. Some people are going to turn to religion. Whatever is required to get your head out of this physical game that we've been playing and get your head into some other game that's going to make us more open-minded and better able to respond to the urgent needs of our planet, and by extension the universe, the better. And so I think the broad interest in psychedelics that we're seeing is a part of that too, because psychedelics reduce our brain activity and it makes us more literally open. I just have this image in my head at the moment of like sirens blazing, and it's like the rest of the universe, without literally turning up at the White House in a UFO, is trying to get our attention however possible. And we as human beings are quite closed off. It's hard to get our attention. We're so in our own reality, because again, we only perceive what we need to survive. So we're not out there perceiving all of the universe. We're only looking at this little sliver of reality that is necessary for us to keep living. But if we have expanded states of consciousness through meditation, using psychedelics, spiritual practice, it seems like more of that other aspect of reality can get in. And that's what's necessary. Like, it's deeply necessary for more of that other reality to get in, because for whatever reason, it seems like that broader perspective, that extra intelligence that's not just on Earth and not just human, they have our interest at heart. They want to help us not blow each other up. So consider for a moment psychedelic experience, consider spiritual experience. I feel like there are entities out there that can come in when your state of consciousness is more porous and open and influence you. And depending on who you are, they're going to influence you in a different way. They're not going to knock at everyone's door and give them the same message. They're not going to say, hey mate, climate change is a problem, you're going to kill each other, do this in your life please, I need you to create this business, or I need you to adopt this philosophy. That's not going to work for everyone. So for some people, they turn up in a particular vision. For other people like Bernardo, they're going to give them philosophical insight and ideas about metaphysics so that he can go on and create his work. For other people, it's going to be like, hey, you're supposed to make music, or hey, maybe you should break up with your partner and move to another city, because from the perspective of this intelligence that's influencing us in these states, we're just little ants, and they're just moving their little ants around as is necessary to try and, over the course of many hundreds of years, fix what's going on Earth. And that's the era of consciousness expansion that we're living through. It's going to take hundreds of years, guys. You know, like maybe some of us are already here for this, but it's like 1 to 5% of us at best. Most of us are just like, just completely absorbed in their own crap. And I'm a monkey, I'm trying to pursue life and live it up as a monkey. I want to be the richest, most successful monkey. It's funny, and it's actually horrible, because there's so much horror in the world, so much suffering in the world. We are the one consciousness, we are the same core subjectivity. So I hope you're enjoying living it up, but you're also there suffering, and it's a mess. And we have evolved to the state now where we can actually fix this problem. And the good news is, I don't think we have to fix it alone. There's clearly an intelligence to the universe represented in ET intelligence, represented in spiritual beings, higher dimensional entities, that's going to give us the solution to things like climate change. And I'm sorry if you find that offensive, me talking about climate change, but the world's not in a good place and it needs to be fixed. Okay, so I'm sorry if that offends you, but the world's not in a good place and it needs to be fixed. We've got quite a few problems, not just a single problem. And this broader intelligence that you can spiritualize and think of as deities, it's all got the same message. It's trying to help fix the problems. So I hope it's clear at this point in the video that I sit down with absolutely no intention when I record this stuff. I sat down with the intention maybe of reacting to Bernardo Kastrup, but the actual clips that I picked and the actual things that I said, I feel like I have no control over, and I'm just here in the background somewhere being led and guided by some sort of an impersonal intelligence that has a broader perspective on life than I do. And I think about it in two different ways. So on the one hand, there is this dualistic sense of there's an intelligence outside myself that is guiding me. I can think of it as my higher self. I can think of it as a entity in mind at large. I can think of it however I like. That's the dualistic representation. So there's Jack, and he's a bit of an idiot, but then there's something else that's more intelligent than Jack, that's there guiding him through this process and is making my thoughts make sense and understands these concepts before I even am convinced that I understand them. It's pretty crazy. But the other perspective is the true impersonal intelligence. And that's more the consciousness that's in me right now. So there's no like intermediary between me and some other part of life. It's like there's a part of me, us, reality, consciousness. It's here, it's in us right now, and it is completely intelligent, and it maybe even is sort of omniscient. Now, you can't talk about it really, because it's me as Jack dualistically talking about it. It just all breaks down. But there are moments, I suppose, in life where there is no ego. There is no egoic limitation. And so it's just impersonal will that comes through. And to me, all of my attempts to expand my state of consciousness and to support others in expanding their state of consciousness is an attempt to spread this. Because the more that this gets spread, the faster we solve our problems. And I don't care how much of an idiot I need to look like in order to spread it. I literally don't care. I don't care about the judgment. I don't care about, I mean, I do care about being threatened on a physical level. I'm going to sustain my own life process. Thank you very much. But genuinely, I've seen enough now. It's like we've got to do as much as we can to just get this message out there. And it's not just one message. It's not just philosophy. It's not just spirituality. It's not just kundalini activation. It's like anything and everything we can. We're just throwing things at this wall because most of the human population is so far away from this. And we are imperfect. I'm imperfect. I'm just a monkey too. But at this particular moment in time, this monkey's got something going on that many of the other monkeys don't. And in a few hundred years, I'll look like nothing compared to, hopefully, where the average human has sort of reached. And, you know, I think it's possible that there is a soul as well, and it's going through different incarnations, and there is a higher self as well. I actually think that all holds up in my experience. I've really looked into it. But at the end of the day, it's about putting your ego aside, seeing how much of your experience is just limited by all of these concepts, all of this crap that you've inherited, and trying to create the space for life itself, infinite consciousness, to just come into the picture. Like, we don't need to know what it's trying to do. Just bring it in. Bring it in. Things are going to go well. And then in the meantime, I am creating a record label and, you know, STARSIGHT, and we're going to have fun. And, you know, it's pretty cool.